We live in a virtual reality simulation. The Double-Slit Experiment proves it. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the Double-Slit Experiment, specifically through the What the Bleep Do We Know, a movie which has a pretty good animation of how the experiment works in there. Kind of want to go through and explain some of the things that mainstream science really says there's no explanation for, yet doesn't really provide any potential answers. So there are potential answers, and it seems pretty clear what's going on once we can wrap our head around the fact that our reality is not a material reality, but is instead a virtual reality. You look at this long enough, you can kind of figure it out. I'm not smarter or better or anything like that. I've just come into this information from a little different place and kind of learned from the best by really delving into the information provided by Campbell, who has a big theory of everything that actually works and answers all of these outstanding questions that all of your academic professors and what have you say that there is absolutely no answer to, and just discredits it as weird science. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the movie, and I'll pause it periodically to kind of make some points.
So, what they taught us in school isn't really the way it is, and that our senses are playing tricks on us. You just gotta wonder, what is this reality that we find ourselves in? Quantum physics says it's all just waves of information. Do I believe that? I hope so. Yikes!
I found that to be a little weird, where he hopes he believes that, and that kind of ties back to how our culture is. We want to, we hope that our understanding conforms with everybody else's, because if it doesn't, then we are weird or we are outcasted. Well, this information doesn't tie out with anything that we learn in school. Our first response to much of this information is to throw it out, ridicule it, laugh at it, or just say it's stupid. I encourage you to just kind of have an open mind with this and see it for what it is.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double-slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands.
So I wanted to stop it here just to illustrate what is going on here and how it makes no sense according to accepted physics law. So you're shooting marbles, actually much smaller particles than that, but might as well be marbles, just on a much smaller scale because these are physical pieces of matter, firing them through this thing here, and they invariably show up like this on the back screen, which is impossible. If you fire marbles through one of these two slits, how can they come over here? They would have to be in the two slits that are directly in front of it. So you get into wave patterns and things that physics uses to kind of explain this away, but the fact of the matter remains, you can't fire a marble through one of two holes and have it end up over here. So that's the basis for the double slit experiment. That's why it doesn't make any sense according to mainstream science. And the only answer for it is that we live in a virtual reality.
An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through.
All right, just want to pause it there to kind of highlight the incorrect assumptions and where this double slit experiment, where the theories behind it just go completely off track as far as it going through both slits, it going through none of the slits, what have you. This is still looking at everything from a physical or material perspective. There's nothing demonstrating that any matter is going through any of these slits, but we have no other way to wrap our heads around it other than to assume, well, it must be going through one of the slits, both of the slits. It must be doing something with the slits. And that's a bad assumption, and that's basically kind of where we've been for about 100 years on the double slit experiment, trying to figure out how pieces of physical matter could perform like this, instead of taking a step back and coming to the conclusion that we don't live in a world of physical matter. Physical matter is secondary to a virtual reality system which we reside within. So we'll talk a little more about that, but that's the basis for what's going on here, and we will never, ever, ever reach this conclusion if we stick to the assumption that physical matter makes up everything and that the non-physical has no part in this. To illustrate that point a little better, I want to show a few quotes from the pioneers of quantum physics, demonstrating that we really haven't come anywhere since these individuals first learned these, quote, strange truths regarding reality. Werner Heisenberg, Nobel Prize recipient, said, "The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities, rather than one of things or facts." Heisenberg also said, "Not only is the universe stranger than we think, it is stranger than we can think." Physicist Niels Bohr, another Nobel Prize winner, says, "Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet." Edwin Schrödinger, another Nobel Prize winner, says, "We do not belong to this material world that science constructs for us. We are not in it. We are outside." We are only spectators. The reason why we believe that we are in it, that we belong to this picture, is that our bodies are in the picture. Our bodies belong to it. Not only my own body, but those of my friends, also of my dog and cat and horse, and of all the other people and animals. And this is my only means of communicating with them. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler, professor of physics at Princeton, says, "The universe does not exist out there independent of us. We are inescapably involved in bringing about that which appears to be happening. We are not only observers, we are participators. In some strange sense, this is a participatory universe. Physics is no longer satisfied with insights only into particles, fields of force, into geometry, or even into time and space. Today we demand of physics some understanding of existence itself." Physicist Niels Bohr, another Nobel Prize winner, says, "The common sense view of the world in terms of objects that really exist out there, independently of our observations, totally collapses in the face of the quantum factor." Physicist Richard Feynman, another Nobel Prize winner, says, "We choose to examine a phenomenon which is impossible, absolutely impossible to explain in any classical way, and which has in it the heart of quantum mechanics. In reality, it contains the only mystery. We cannot make the mystery go away by explaining how it works. We will just tell you how it works. In telling you how it works, we will have told you about the basic peculiarities of all quantum mechanics."
They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange netherworld of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
So in a nutshell, the double-slit experiment shows us that our surroundings, our physical reality around us is reacting to us. Essentially that we are inputs in a much larger system, an interconnected system, which is the only way that this sort of phenomenon would be possible. And at the same time, a situation of this nature is only possible within a virtual reality system where the computer, or what is computing the virtual reality, resides outside or around the reality system where the players or the inputs reside. And this isn't a far out theory either. There is a lot of research, almost 30 years of research done by Princeton, the Pear Labs Institute, which conclusively found that consciousness essentially is what is computing this reality around us, and that the physical reality is secondary to a larger reality system. So that's kind of where we're at. I wrote a whole book on this. If anyone is interested, highly recommend Tom Campbell's YouTube channel or his My Big Toe 3-book series on this. He is the frontiersman, so to speak, of this information, and it's just a matter of time before this is accepted as fact, or at least worked off of to refine and improve on the theory itself. But it's the only theory that explains everything in our physical and non-physical world consistently, so it should not be ignored. Thank you very much for watching. Hope this was informative, entertaining, and I kindly invite you back. I'll be putting these videos out as often as I can, so I really appreciate your time. Take care.